Hello and welcome to Quincy Access Television's first of two mayoral debates for the upcoming November 7th city election here in Quincy between incumbent Mayor Thomas Koch and challenger at-large Councilor Ann Mahoney. I'll be your moderator, Joe Catalano, for this evening. Thank you for joining us here on Quincy Access Television, Channel 8, Channel HD 1072, and live online at QATV.org. We welcome our candidates this evening. We thank our viewers for joining us. We will run down the format for this evening and then begin with our debates. The questions have been submitted by Quincy residents for this evening's debate, as well as candidates will ask each other one question each during this format. We look forward to that part of the debate as well. Both campaigns have agreed to the guidelines and the format. We had a coin toss just before the beginning of this debate this evening to determine the order of opening and closing statements, and we will reverse that for our second debate, which will be coming up October 12th at 7 p.m. at Quincy High School. We hope you can join us there for that as well. As again determined by the coin toss that we held earlier this evening, the opening statements will begin with the Councilor at Large, Ann Mahoney. You have 2 minutes, Councilor.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you to QATV for hosting this evening, and thank you to all the viewers who are tuning in, and thank you as well to Mayor Koch for being here. I'm Ann Mahoney. I'm currently your Councilor at Large. I'm a former school committee member, business owner, and most importantly, a lifelong Quincy resident. I decided to get into this race because I think it's time for new leadership at City Hall so that we can actually stand up for our community, for all of us to be able to thrive in our city. I've been at your doors, on the phones, at community events, and we've been talking about the challenges that actually we need to meet here at the City of Quincy. I promise when I'm as your mayor, I promise that we will deliver those challenges. When it comes to affordability for the City of Quincy, we will make sure that we are delivering affordability to both the people who move here, young people who move here, and people who have been generational here in the City of Quincy, as well as older people who want to age here with dignity. When it comes to smart development, we promise that we will develop the smart development when it comes to who we're going to be housing for all levels of income in the City of Quincy, as well as making sure we're bringing in the amenities that we want to have in the City of Quincy. For infrastructure and for transit, we'll make sure that we'll be able to move in our City of Quincy and also be able to take the train, which is a key component for that smart development. And when it comes to the everyday necessities of the City of Quincy, the operations of the City of Quincy, we will continue to make sure we're serving you in our city. When it comes to our schools, our police, and our fire, we will be there for you. And when it comes to our parks and our amenities that we're doing, we will make sure you have those too. And for our main streets and local economy, we'll make sure we're delivering on those. I'm here to talk about these issues and many more so that we can deliver those for you in the City of Quincy. And I look forward to earning your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mayor Koch, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to QATV for sponsoring tonight. Also, it's great to be with Councilor Mahoney. We actually ran into each other knocking doors on Samoset Ave a few weeks back, out and about. I think the people expect us to be out in the neighborhoods, and we've seen each other out there. First of all, to my Jewish friends, today is Yom Kippur, so we was thinking of you, the holiest of days for you in this year, and may you be sealed in the book of life. I'm very fortunate to serve as the mayor of this great city, and I'm proud of the accomplishments we had working together with my colleagues in government, working together with employees, department heads, colleagues at all levels of government for that matter. We've brought this city through some very difficult crises over the years, weather events, pandemics, whether it's snow, inland floods, coastal floods, and we come out stronger at each time. I'm so proud of where we are with our school system. We're on our 5th new school, terrific state reimbursement, but more importantly, what's happening in the classroom is remarkable. I thank our teachers, our staff, faculty members for the great work they do in an effort to have every child the opportunity to succeed. We have more police and firemen on staff than we've had in 40 years. I'm proud of the record with our 911 response, our apparatus updates, the new public safety headquarters, which is under construction. It's so important we support those who look out for us each and every day. We are known as a safe city, a clean city. In fact, I had the mayor of Cork, Ireland, the other day in my office, and his comment was, "You have a pristine city here, Mr. Mayor." That's not by accident. We thank the folks that work Public Works, Parks, Natural Resources that work hard in each and every day. The service in the city is second to none. Whether it's the Kennedy Center for our seniors, Veteran Services, the incredible services that our public libraries all provide. We are a great city. and I'm proud to serve as the mayor of the city and look forward to tonight's questions.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Speaking of questions, we'll get to the question portion of our debate here this evening. There'll be a total of 8 questions presented this evening, 6 from Quincy residents that we've collected over the past week and a half or so. We received almost 50 different questions from residents throughout the city, and we endeavored to get a good variety of questions covering all of the main topics that are affecting the city today. Also, 2 questions during this debate this evening will be posed by the candidates to each other, and that'll be in the middle part of the debate, so we invite you to stay tuned to look forward to that. Also want to remind both candidates that you have a 30-second bonus rebuttal time that you can use one time throughout this debate, except for your closing statements. Just let me know that you'd like to use that extra 30 seconds rebuttal time, and we'll add that to the timer given the question that you're answering at that time. So we will begin with our first question. We received actually a number of questions regarding the proposed lease for Quarry Hills Associates up at the Granite Links Golf Club. And before we get to that question, I do just want to read a letter that was issued just today from Quarry Hills Associates, dated today, September 25th, 2023, from the president of Quarry Hills, Thomas O'Connell, to the president of the City Council and also the chairman of the City Council's Ordinance Committee, Dave McCarthy. And this, again, was dated today. And I'll paraphrase, but it essentially says, given the current projected public timeline regarding the Raschuti Drive intersection safety improvements, Quarry Hills has made the decision to request the withdrawal of Quarry Hills Associates' request for a 99-year lease extension. So again, that's dated today, withdrawing the request for the 99-year lease extension. So with that, and given the number of questions that we received on that topic, Councillor Mahoney, we'll take the one that Steve Cahoon presented. Where do the candidates stand on the Quarry Hills 99-year lease extension? Obviously, that is now moot. However, it gives you an opportunity to expand on that particular topic, and you have 2 minutes for that.
Thank you very much. So whenever I am actually in my business day job, I always look at things and I assess the value of the project that's coming before me. I take those same skills and I bring them to my city council job. The 99-year lease was presented to us as a red line lease. It didn't have any backup. It just talked about the 99-year lease. And what we were told by the administration was, we're just taking out the language that changed it from a dump to a golf course, which made me scratch my head a little bit because it was a great story to tell. And I thought, why aren't we telling the story? So when I looked into the 99-year lease, we saw that there was a lot of things that we were not getting delivered. We did not have an audit. We did not have a presentation on the 99 lease. And even more, there were a lot of things that were promised in that first 50-year lease that they did not deliver on. So those are the first concerns that I had with the 99-year lease. And then as you move forward with that lease, you started to realize that deal was just not a good deal for the taxpayers of the city of Quincy. There were places in that lease that promised that should they go out and borrow money, that would go against the net gross that would come back into the city of Quincy. That means they could be borrowing billions of dollars and the interest would be written off by the city of Quincy. Another section showed that there was a portion that showed that they could sublet. This was a generational lease for the wrong reasons, not a good deal for the city of Quincy. What I can tell you is when I'm mayor, I will always review and make sure that we're putting our best packages before the city council and that the city of Quincy's residents will never be treated like a rubber stamp for a developer, any developer. We will always make sure that we're providing the best for the taxpayers of the city of Quincy. I realized today that they pulled that because of Raschuti Drive. Traffic was also an issue there, but I have to tell you that we have to be careful because this will come back, and I'm concerned for the taxpayers if we don't tighten that language and make sure it's a good deal for the taxpayers of the city of Quincy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor, you have 2 minutes.
Sure. First of all, Quarry Hills, that location, that incredible golf course and ball fields is absolutely amazing asset for the city of Quincy. I was around when there was a landfill. I was around when we put an RFP out years ago in the city to get people to come in and look at what we could do with those properties. The current lessee is the only one that at the time called for no city money involved. So we didn't pay one nickel to the construction of the course, the construction of the ball fields, and the maintenance thereof. In addition, each year we get hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue from what was a dump that we paid X amount a year to maintain a leachate system. We ended up a beautiful piece of open space. The lease went before the city council as a draft. As many things go to the city council is open to amend, adjust, vote up, vote down. That is the role of the council work with the administration. So it appears now it is a moot point, but I believe there's still 31 years left on that lease with the developer. So I'll continue to make sure that the fields are appropriate for our youth as they've enjoyed those. And we'll continue to make sure there's access on the walking trails, which was raised during this process. And I believe some of that has already been worked out with the developer. So again, it's a magnificent piece of property. It's a great asset to the city of Quincy. It wasn't always that way up there. That land has come a long way. It was mostly industrial space up there, which could have gone in a very different direction for the city. So since that time, we've also enjoyed some nice development up around there, which brings taxes into the city, which is helpful in providing all the services we do.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor, you have 30 seconds of rebuttal.
Yes, thank you very much. So one of the things I will say is that it was a dump 21 years ago. It's not a dump anymore. So the new lease that's coming in has to benefit more than 10%. The formula just doesn't work. When you actually read the lease and you actually put money on the table and start to look at it, we're not actually getting the best deal for the taxpayers of the city of Quincy. I realize, again, it's been taken off the table. Really what we should be doing is focus. We could actually sublet that out to somebody else as well. We really have to protect our taxpayers. That's our space up there. That's our open space up there. The deal that was struck 21 years ago was to change it from a dump to a golf course. But now the deal is to take it back to our citizens.
Our next question comes from Jay Graz, and it is, what are the top 3 concrete goals, in parentheses, actual projects or initiatives, not abstract ideas, close parentheses, you'd like to see come to fruition for the city of Quincy in your term, should you be elected? And Mayor, this question begins with you, and you have 2 minutes.
Sure. We'd like to continue with the improvements we've made. Major infrastructure improvements after many years of neglect. Our roads, $100 million road program, we've replaced about a quarter of those. Our schools, we're just about finishing up the Learning Center, about to go in the ground for the Squantum Elementary School. I'd like to begin planning for the West Quincy Elementary School. I think that's going to be a phenomenal thing for the people of West Quincy to have that. Want to complete the public safety headquarters as it's under construction as we speak. I want to continue the infrastructure improvements across the board, making sure that we have every neighborhood with improvements, whether that's parks. Faxon Park is probably the next big one for major improvements. We've seen great work to Marymount Park and parks across the city. We've got some work to do at the Kennedy Center, some issues with the building that'll be squared away as we speak. Like to see that finished up. And generally speaking, continue the work we're doing, improving the quality of life for the residents of this great city.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. So again, on the City Council, we've seen a lot of things that have been going on in the City Council. Since I've gone on the City Council, we've bonded over I think it's $1.2 billion. $100 million of that was for infrastructure. The first 3 things that I'd like to say that I would do when I'm mayor is really open up our accounting and transparency to be accountable to the taxpayers of the city of Quincy. We've asked for many things on the City Council, and we haven't really got those reports back, and I think it's important that we start to build trust back in our government. We've had some great development that's happened in the downtown. I would still continue with that, but I would put a marketing plan out to make sure that we're doing a master plan for all of our development throughout the whole city and really start focusing on those complete streets, because really we're doing piecemeal as we go through the city. Traffic and transit is a huge issue in our city. That's a third piece that I would do, and I think the last piece I would do would make sure that we're really being inclusive and presenting things to the city, to the full city when we're having meetings, not letting them be presented in the newspapers, but actually having real conversations with our constituents so that they can be part of the future growth that we have. We've forgotten about the constituents of the city of Quincy, and we really need to start to get back to that so that we can build the community that we want here in the city of Quincy. That's when everything will start to come together. The amenities will come once we're starting to be able to let everybody thrive, both the businesses and the people here in the city of Quincy. Thank you.
Mayor, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Sure. We put the city on good financial footing. One of those things we dealt with was the pension obligation bonds. With the pension system, the graph was going to go like this going forward. We did the pension obligation bond, got 2.6% interest rate, flatten out the payments. Over the next 19 years, we're going to save $130 million for the taxpayers of the city.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question comes from Anthony Mangano. And Anthony asks, housing costs have increased dramatically for renters over the last several years. It's also become extremely difficult for those who do not already own property to break into the market and buy their first home in Quincy, with rates being so high and competition being so fierce. I have lived in Quincy as a renter for nearly 10 years. I love it here and would love to stay, but I cannot see a future here anymore with housing costs being where they and are continuing to increase. What is your view on this issue? If you are elected mayor, what can or will you do to help create opportunities for those who do not already own property to stay and build a life in Quincy? And Councillor Mahoney, we begin with you. 2 minutes for that.
Thank you very much. This is a very important question. I like to tell people that I chose to come back and buy my great-grandparents' house here in the city of Quincy. I'm the 4th generation to live in the house. My children are the 5th. My concern is for those generational people who won't be able to keep our homes in the city of Quincy. And then when I look at the renters, I'm questioning even how they can afford to live here. We're building right now for affluent people to come to live in the city of Quincy. And what we really need to do is start focusing on our housing market and build so that we're building affordability for the city of Quincy. It takes all of us to create a community, and it's happening throughout all of our state when it comes to housing. But as your mayor, what I promise to do is actually do a housing inventory to make sure we understand what we have today and know what we're building for tomorrow, to ensure that people can afford to live here at all economic levels, not just the affluent. We'll also have to make sure that the builders or whoever's developing in the city is also ensuring that they're building for those different levels, not just putting it into a trust, but actually putting it into work today for today. There are other things that we can do too for the homeowners, is being able to create a residential tax break for the people who are living here, because there's been a lot of development and the costs have increased tremendously across the board, and creating zoning like ADUs to be able to allow people to find creative ways to be able to stay here in the city of Quincy. We have to work together to figure out what it is that we want to accomplish today so that we're building out for the people who live here now and for the next generation. Or my fear is that Quincy will not be the city that it used to be. Generational people who live here, or people who choose to live here because it's close to Boston. It's also something that we really have to focus on for our teachers, fires, and police officers that need to live in our community. There are so many opportunities that exist here in the city of Quincy, but right now the way we're developing things is just really for everybody to maximize their investment and profit in the city of Quincy, and we should be investing in our community as well. Thank you.
Mayor, you have 2 minutes.
Sure. The challenge is very strong. We have a great problem in the greater Boston area, including Quincy, in that we have shortage of housing. The reason why the rents are so dramatically high is because of the supply and demand. We have a true shortage. So the last several years, this administration has worked well with the state and others to build housing. You know, we've got a number of projects that we added to the city, including the Bizzuto project in North Quincy. I think it's a great example. 8 acres of asphalt by North Quincy T Station. Built 610 units of housing. That provides about $1.6 million in taxes each year, money to the T in rent, but also provides jobs during that construction. So we need to look at how we address the housing issue in many different ways. One is we need more units in general. Whether you build specific workforce housing, which we have, you continue to have units in the marketplace to level the rents as they are today. So we've done almost 6,000 units in the last several years, which has added tremendously to the housing stock. We've added a number of workforce housing developments, whether it's the Watson, the Kiley building, the Joe Finn building, a number of projects. The Affordable Housing Trust has also financed. As developers come in, they donate or do units in lieu of under our inclusionary zoning. So I think it's important that we continue that progress in the right areas. I mentioned Bizzuto, it's right on top of the T station. Quincy Center was in severe decline when I took office. We created a whole new downtown, we transformed it, and it's a 24/7 neighborhood. That's where we want to have the development. Crown Colony was another place, right by the Quincy Adams station, up at Elevation. Those are the places we've kind of really focused on to create the additional housing that we truly need. I got 3 adult children. They all want to live in the city they grew up in, and we're going to do everything we can to help them do that.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
We have 6,000 units that were created in the city of Quincy. 10% would mean that we need 600 affordable units. We don't have 600 affordable units that have been delivered to the city of Quincy. That's the problem. The formula is not working. We need to make sure that we're building for all levels of income in the city of Quincy. It's a balance, and it's a hard one to strike, but we need to do better. And we need to make sure that we're building for that, because we will not be able to see our generations change here in the city. We're seeing an exit happen in the city of Quincy. Generational families are leaving the city of Quincy because they just can't afford it. $2,400 for a 1-bedroom. It's too expensive.
Next question comes from Ross Nanopoulos. And Ross asks, we've heard talks of the Wollaston Urban Revitalization Plan for many years. While we were excited for the improvements, there's been seemingly little to no movement on the initiative. As mayor, how will you take meaningful action to bring this plan to fruition? Mayor, we begin with you. You have 2 minutes.
Sure. Yes, we've had great success in the downtown. We've had great success in North Quincy, and we have focused on the Wollaston district, working with the city council the last few years. We're creating an overlay district in the downtown, which will help us incentivize the area for investment. We have obviously the MBTA station there in Wollaston, which has been completely rebuilt. It was the last in the Red Line stations to be built fully ADA accessible. That gives us a great opportunity now with a new station to look at the properties around it. So the area in Wollaston, the heart of Wollaston, Beale Street, as well as the area across Newport Avenue, we have a number of folks that have bought the properties. They are now coming forward with informal plans to the planning department to begin in the process to really rejuvenate Wollaston Center, trying to protect the character of the neighborhood, but at the same time, new investment to provide new housing, new retail, and new opportunities.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Being a commuter, I'm going to go back a few years when we did the MBTA over. Advocating for the commuters, the people that use the trains, it's a real issue. One of the things that we don't have is an MBTA that works. On the north side of Boston, what we were seeing is train stations being added, lines being added, development happening, amenities coming, and you're seeing a boom happen in all those areas. In the last 6 years, you saw the Seaport be built out and the Silver Line go in. In Somerville, we saw a Green Line extension be built out. The Red Line is just not working. We might have the T station that's got now accessibility, but the Red Line's just not working. We need a mayor that's going to actually work very hard to make sure that the Red Line's working before we start building these buildings out, because honestly, without that working, it just adds to the traffic that's happening in the city of Quincy. Currently, the mayor of the city of Quincy sits on the board, and we've never heard him actually advocate for that. I've taken the train for 30 years. I know what it's like to take a train. When I'm mayor, we will develop out the city, but the most important thing we'll be working with is our state, local, and local officials to make sure that we're making that train station work. We've been waiting for 6 years. The promise for the switches were 6 years ago, and now it's 2023, and it works even less. So before we can actually start any development in Wollaston, we have to make sure the Red Line is working. But when it comes to the downtown, we've also only seen one third of the downtown done as well. So we really need to focus on making sure we're bringing in those amenities so that all of the people in the city of Quincy can actually stay in the city of Quincy, work in the city of Quincy, get on the train, and be able to work out. That's when people will want to come and the city will thrive. And I will work on that when I'm your mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Mayor, you have 30 seconds.
Sure. As we all know, the MBTA was neglected for the last 60 decades. I mean, 60 years, the last 6 decades. And one of the challenges along the way, and I voiced my concern as chair of the advisory board, was some of these new additions, the extension of the Green Line, for example, at the expense of maintenance of the older system. Fortunately, under Governor Baker, now under Governor Healy, we're moving forward with tremendous investment. It's probably going to take another year and a half before we turn the corner. We're going to be seeing a new Quincy Central Station as part of that, and we are very close for all that to start to happen.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We've reached the portion of our debate where the candidates will be asking each other questions. We'll still have 2 more questions from residents coming up following this portion, but right now we will ask the candidates to ask each other questions, and we begin with the mayor asking Councilor Mahoney a question.
Councilor Mahoney, I guess you've been in office 18 years, last 6 years on the council. I guess what would you point as your biggest accomplishment on the city council?
On the city council? Well, I'd like to say, thank you very much. I've had 12 years on the school committee and 6 years on the city council. And I'd say my biggest accomplishment on the city council has really been fighting for the taxpayers of the city of Quincy and making sure that your tax dollars are being spent wisely for you. I'm not afraid to stand up and ask questions when it comes to asking where your tax dollars are going. But I'd also like just to back up for a second and tell you there's many things I've been proud of, working with thousands of people, constituents, helping them stand up for themselves at the ZBA, organizing people to help them stand up for their rights in the city of Quincy, because really it's been a forgotten task for the administration right now. When you go to ZBA, you're not respected by the board. Neighbors are standing up and really pushing back about the overdevelopment that's happening in their neighborhoods. I'm very proud of being able to work with our constituents to make sure that they have a voice and that they can stand up for themselves. One of the things I've been extremely proud of, though, When I first got on the City Council, I asked for a day of pride for the City of Quincy, and I worked with our LGBT constituents, and we organized Quincy Pride. It's now a 501c3, and it's been 6 years that we've had a Pride event. I'm proud of that work. I'm proud of the work that I've done with the ZBA, and I'm also really proud of some work that we've done together, Mayor Koch. Back when we were having that recession when I was on the school committee, I went around and educated people throughout the city on really the finances of the City of Quincy and full-day kindergarten. At that time, that was on the cutting block. And quite honestly, after explaining to people how it would not benefit people to pay for full-day kindergarten, the mayor chose wisely to keep full-day kindergarten as part of our offerings for our taxpayers of the City of Quincy. And I thank you very much. And I think that shows pure collaboration between the two of us. But mostly, I think it really shows that I'm able to work up and down the ladder to be able to be your next mayor. Thank you.
Mayor, you do have 30 seconds rebuttal.
I am curious why you've mentioned overdevelopment a couple times tonight. I submitted a zoning change in September of 2021. You were chair of the ordinance committee and never held one meeting on that. That would have had a dramatic improvement in the residential A parts of our neighborhood throughout the city. Why no action on that?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor, you have the opportunity to ask the mayor a question now, and leave you that opportunity.
Sure. Mayor Koch, although the 99-year lease has been pulled from Quarry Hills Association due to traffic issues, it was still a project that you put before the City Council, and you said it was a good deal for the City of Quincy. There's been many of those types of projects that have been put before our city that seem to be rubber stamped, and the constituents of the City of Quincy are asking. You know, the City of Quincy feels like it's for sale. And the reason why they're asking that question is because you, as the mayor of the City of Quincy, seems to have gained from these developers. These developers have helped with your war chest. I think over $175,000 to $200,000 have been placed into your war chest regarding these developers, and only 46% of the money that you do receive comes from taxpayers of the City of Quincy. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, Mayor Koch, what do you say to the constituents that feel that you're working for the developers opposed to the constituents of the City of Quincy?
I think my record's
2 minutes for that, Mayor.
I think my record's been pretty clear. We worked very well to bring investment into the city. As I mentioned, the downtown was in complete decline. Stop and Shop was threatening to leave the city. We've positively transformed this city to something we can all be proud of. I hear that at all the doors. You talk about shortage of housing. It's the developers who build the housing. The city is not in the business of building housing. So you have to have the relationships with those investors, and the investments that we've had across the city are paying dividends. You mentioned the taxes. Your taxes would be $1,700 higher on average if we didn't have this development. We have 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. We're right smack in the middle in tax burden, but right on the top when it comes to services. And that's due in part because of the investment we've had at places like Bizzuto, at places like Elevation, west of Chestnut, and the other developments that are happening throughout Quincy Center. All that new value is a tremendous benefit to the city. We do not tax to the max. There's only 3 communities that have a higher excess levy capacity in Quincy than we do, meaning we've left almost $400 million on the table since we've been in, not taxing to that max. So it's important to find that balance, and I think we have struck that balance. As we go forward, we're going to be looking for more investment in the Wollaston Center as we deal with that overlay district to create new investment and more retail and housing in that part of our city.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor?
Mayor Koch, I think you missed the question. You are taking money from the developers, so it looks like you've put our city for sale. People were promised amenities. They were promised places that they could go, more than just restaurants. They were also promised that they would have a benefit to them. So right now, the only benefit they have is it takes them an extra 45 minutes to get across the city, to get out of the city, to go shopping, because there's no place for them to shop in the city. And it seems like the only one who's really, truly benefited from the city, from this development, and from these relationships is you.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll remind both candidates that you do have your 30-second rebuttal time still available for each of you. If you'd like to use that, just notify me, and we'll add 30 seconds to the clock for either one of you. If not, we'll get on to our next 2 questions from residents. And this one comes from Joseph Desmond. And Joseph asks, how do you propose to resolve the morning traffic jams on the Neponset Bridge? Would you be willing to make concessions with Boston on the Long Island Bridge in exchange for Boston making infrastructure improvements on the expressway on-ramp at Neponset? For example, by rebuilding a much wider 3-lane on-ramp to relieve the bottleneck. And this question goes to Councilor Mahoney for a 2-minute response.
Thank you very much. So the traffic and congestion is a big issue in the city of Quincy, and part of it has to do with the fact that our MBTA doesn't work and many of the other issues that we have that's gone on in the city of Quincy. $100 million have been invested into our streets, should make our streets a little bit easier to drive on, but the infrastructure is still undermining the fact that our cars are having a tough time because we have to have them aligned all of the time. So when it comes to the bridge that we're talking about, those are two separate questions, and I do think that we're losing a lot with the bridge when it comes to our legal battles that we're having, and it's combining two things. So I'm not sure if we can actually negotiate to have something else done, but what I will tell you is with the Long Island Bridge, they're trying to solve an opioid crisis and a mental health crisis, which is a national crisis, and what we should really be doing is sitting down with our state, federal, and local officials to actually talk about those crises, as well as our traffic issues that we have in our state as well. But that's the real issue that they're talking about with the Long Island Bridge. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do that because it looks like we're losing on court left and right, so we do have to have an opportunity to make sure we're sitting down to protect the taxpayers of the city of Quincy, but most importantly, the people, the roads in the city of Quincy. We can't afford another area that's going to be overridden by our traffic in the city of Quincy. But it's not just in that section. It's also the development that we're seeing in the west side of the city, Rischuti Drive, and also over by Furnace-Brook Parkway. We're allowing a lot of development to happen, and we're having congestion happening in all sections of the city. We have to work, as mayor, what I will say that we'll do is we'll work very hard to be able to use those complete streets to be able to solve the problems and work with our state and federal government to be able to focus on those, to be able to find ways to calm our traffic and be able to really push people back onto the trains is where we need to be, because that's what's really that's the part that we need to work on as well.
Thank you, Councilor. Mayor, you have 2 minutes to respond.
There are two separate issues. The city of Boston doesn't really control the highway, nor does it control the Quonset Bridge. I have been in discussions with MassDOT folks and officials. They are doing a study now on the percentage of the traffic that's Quincy versus the cut-through traffic. Much of the 3A comes through our city in the morning to get to Boston. Our strength is our weakness. Being next to Boston has great economic opportunity, but also brings with it cut-through traffic, whether it's cutting off on Willard Street or coming up through the South Shore and then heading to the Neponset Bridge. So we are looking at that now with MassDOT. The Long Island Bridge issue is concerning to me because it's not just about the use that Boston's proposed, but there's 225 acres on that island. And the city of Boston, a number of years ago, designated an opportunity zone. An opportunity zone means investors can come in and do things and get some tax benefits out of it, which tells me that Boston had in mind a lot more for developing that island than just the use of dealing with the homeless issue and the addiction folks, which I absolutely fully support. I would hope Boston would look at the ferry service. In fact, I've been working with Lieutenant Governor Driscoll about getting a more robust water transportation program in Boston Harbor like she did in Salem, out of Marina Bay, which would also help cut some of the traffic down. Additionally, we have one of the best traffic engineers in the state. We've made some great progress. We're going to be doing the ramp at Rischuti Drive, $12 million improvement between C Street, Quincy Shore Drive down to Palmer Street. We've done East and West Howard Streets, East and West Quanah Street and Hancock Street, Newport Avenue, Adams Street. We continue to make those incremental improvements. In fact, Hancock Street at Furnace-Brook Parkway, people may have noticed a difference by what the traffic engineer has done there. It's already reduced the amount of accidents that happen there, making it safer for pedestrians, folks on bikes, as well as people riding in their cars. So we're making good progress in that area. We live in a region that has overwhelming traffic. Certain times of the day, no matter what community you're going to go to, you're going to have traffic.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor, you do have 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you very much. Much of the traffic that we have in the city of Quincy is man-made from some of the development when we are allowing single-family homes to go up and to change into multi-units, not 2 or 3, but 12 or 15, sometimes 42 units into an area and saying 0% impact to traffic. We really do have to do a master plan throughout the city to make sure that when we're making those decisions, what the impact is going to be on those roads. They're not Ubers or Lyfts. They're man-made traffic that we're creating. So we have to balance all of those things. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have these problems, and it's not just going to be during the height of traffic. It's going to be all day.
Thank you, Councilor. Our final question from residents.
30 seconds on that, Joe?
Did I not give you the 30-second rebuttal?
Thank you.
Go right ahead. This is your bonus rebuttal.
Mrs. Mahoney, you didn't act on a proposal that would have helped neighborhoods restricted from density. The City Council, you pointed out the job of the mayor. The City Council's major role is controlling zoning. You've yet to offer in 6 years one zoning change in the city of Quincy, so your record speaks for yourself.
Councillor, would like to use your 30-second bonus time?
Sure. I think my record does speak for itself. I stand up for the constituents in the city of Quincy. I'm a councillor at large. When it comes to zoning, it's really up to the zoning. It's the ward councillors that have to do that. We did bring forth a zoning reform for the full city. Spot zoning is not what we're supposed to be doing. When it came before the city council, as always, I asked all of my ward councillors, and I believe it was ward councillor Dave McCarthy who brought that zoning piece forward, if they needed it and when they wanted to bring it forward. When people asked me to, I always brought things forward.
And our final question from residents this evening comes from Jim Gavoni. And Jim asks, we know about strengths. Those are easy. But what's Quincy's biggest weakness? Thank you. And we begin with Mayor Koch on that for 2 minutes.
I kind of alluded to that the last question. Our strength is our weakness, and as far as economic activity and investment, being next to Boston has tremendous benefits. The downside to that, it has those challenges that go with it, the weaknesses. And one of those is the traffic that comes around the greater Boston area. There's certain times of the day, whether you're going up to Malden, Somerville, northern part, whether you go to East Milton, Braintree, Weymouth, go down to 53 Hanover, there are major challenges with traffic throughout. And I think that's part of the negative, I guess, if you will, being next to Boston. We certainly enjoy the positive, all the incredible investment we're enduring with the 4 T stations in and around those areas with some incredible investment, which is paying dividends. Again, going back to the amount of taxes that are coming in that helps us to provide all the new things we're doing, whether it's roads, whether it's seawalls, whether it's schools, whether it's parks. That wouldn't happen if we didn't have the investment that's happening today. We have not even near the tax limit, therefore the city has never had to do a 2.5 override because of the investment. So I guess the investment portion has been huge, but the challenge continues to be how we manage that traffic, one that we control, but secondly, how we can better manage it, that's the regional traffic that cuts through that city to get to Boston and vice versa in the afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor, you have 2 minutes for that.
Thank you very much. So I think when you're talking about our weakness is that for 16 years we've been developing our city. For 16 years we've been working with several different developers in our city. And for 16 years we never put together a master marketing plan or a master plan for our city. When I spent the summer just talking to developers outside of our city, people from the Seaport area, people from Westwood, people from Somerville, these are developers who have developed. I asked what formula and why is it that Quincy's not bringing the amenities into our downtown or any other location. And what they said is Quincy just doesn't know how to market itself. That's our weakness in the city of Quincy. We've been bypassed not only by this administration, but by other administrations too, where you see development happening and amenities going to other places. We've watched 16 years and 1/3 of our downtown is done. We've done a lot of great things in Quincy, but we've missed the opportunities that we need to start focusing on. When I'm your mayor, I will put a marketing plan together. I asked for that as a councilor, and I will put it together, and we will work with developers to bring the right amenities into the city of Quincy so that people do not have to leave our city to go shopping, but they'll actually come to our city. It will also enhance our downtown with our restaurants and give people opportunities to buy their family members presents when they're going to birthday parties to the restaurants and not have to leave again. These are the things that we've been waiting for 16 years. These are the challenges that we've been having, and these are the reasons why we need to actually change our direction in the future for our mayor, and I promise you I will work on that. We also need to make sure that as we're developing things out, that we're thinking about the constituents and really listening to what their needs are. So many times we've had charrettes where people have told us what they want, but we haven't seen those come to fruition. I know how to make that happen, and I hope you'll let me do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mayor, you do have 30 seconds.
Yeah, the council now twice has alluded to the Seaport. The Seaport, you can't move. The traffic in there is an absolute nightmare each and every day. I'm not sure what amenities we're talking about other than great restaurants, which is what we're also experiencing in our downtown.
Thank you, Mayor. That concludes the question and answer portion of our debate this evening. It is time for our closing statements from the candidates. And again, as predetermined by a coin toss before this debate, we begin with Councillor Ann Mahoney, closing statement. And Councillor, you do have 1 minute.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Joe, and thank you, QATV, and the audience for tuning in tonight. Our city is at a crossroads. We need to make sure that we have representation at City Hall that's representing the taxpayers of the city of Quincy, the constituents of the city of Quincy. I have a record for standing up for the taxpayers. I want to make your taxpayers, your money transparent so you can see it and accountable to the taxpayers of the city of Quincy. Talk to you about what we're going to be doing so you're part of the solutions as we move forward. Include everybody. Be an inclusive city where we're recognizing everybody who lives here. I promise when we take over office, we will be doing that. Please check out votemahoney.com and check out our plan to move our city forward together. And I hope to earn your vote between now and November 7th. I hope to earn your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Mayor, your closing statement for 1 minute.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks to Councilor Mahoney for this spirited debate tonight. Thanks for tuning in as well. I'm very proud of the record of accomplishment we've had over the last 16 years. An accomplishment that has really been driven by the relationships we've had at each level of government. Something I think my opponent does lack. There have been a number of things she's brought up tonight that could have been addressed at the City Council, and she hasn't been able to do that. We have brought in over $300 million of federal and state dollars to help and assist the city with our infrastructure projects, seawalls, schools, parks and playgrounds, all those things that increase the quality of life in this great city. I appreciate those of you who have met me at the door, meets and greets out there. I thank you for greeting me with such warm words. As one woman said to me the other day from Adams Shore, she's lived here 75 years. She's never been more proud to be from the city of Quincy. So with that, I thank you for tuning in and I ask for your vote on November 7th.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor, for joining us this evening here at QATV. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much to our viewers this evening for tuning in. Thank you to our volunteers and staff for helping to bring this production to you this evening. Just a reminder, we will be hosting a second debate between Mayor Thomas Koch and Councilor Ann Mahoney on October 12th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium at Quincy High School. We hope you'll join us then. Also, don't forget early voting for the November 7th election begins on October 28th. It is also the last day to register to vote for the upcoming election. It runs through November 3rd at the Quincy City Clerk's office at Quincy City Hall during regular business hours. You can also request a mail-in ballot from the City Clerk's office for this municipal election coming up again on November 7th. And then, of course, in-person voting on Tuesday, November 7th at the polls from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. For all of us here at Quincy Access Television, I'm Joe Catalano. Thank you for joining us.